I want to talk about how we got here, what people are doing with this different social data that we're collecting, how it's affecting people and brands today, and what I think will be sort of the components of the 3.0 recipe. So, how we got here. Unmet needs. Large unmet needs that can be solved for at massive scale can fundamentally disrupt industries and change the world. So I think that the evolution of the web is really interesting when we think about it in 3 phases. And each phase meeting an unmet need of the previous generation of the web before it. So our lovely friends, Tom and Meg, kind of remind us of the days of You Got Mail, right? So that first phase being the early 90s, where it was all about portals, right? So every website and every brand now was this destination, and brands had this presence online, and that was just sort of a rite of passage. It was a lot about email data, right? So one-way communications, sending a message out there and sort of just waiting for that response. And it was the anonymous web, where our lives were very much disconnected from who we were online to who we were offline, right? So there was that big disconnect from real life to cyberspace. It's interesting to think about the data we were sharing, right? Because we were still sharing data. So, although it was basic, we were still sharing it. Again, anonymous data. So instead of being Sonia, I was Raspberry Red 18. So we had those sort of pseudonyms. Again, emails. We were sharing information about our day. We were searching for things like the news, kind of going to a website and not really returning. Then we got into the era of, what we can call Web 2.0, which can sort of loosely be defined as social networks and search. So where we moved into this era of, social collaboration, community, this idea of, again, meeting this unmet need of human connectedness. So it really felt like it was this sort of collaborative era of the internet. So when we think about something like search, right, it's great when you have a question that's sort of fact-based, right? So, what's your favorite, what's the population of China? Well, that's a great question that search can answer. And again, as John Patel called it, it's the database of intentions, right? So again, great when you're looking at facts. But ask a search engine something like, what Chinese restaurant would it recommend for you? And it doesn't necessarily have the best answer, right? Because that's something that your friends would know. That's something that people that are part of your social networks would really want to discover. So when we think about, this idea of social networks, and we think about how they're collaborating and combining audiences, what does this really look like? Well, it looks like borders being replaced by connections. So we know that the social web is global. We know that these connections now mean that they're being replaced by access to information, people, content, and opportunity. That means that the absence of silos is really, really exciting. So if we think about, both media and the web being inherently social, then that means that businesses must have a social presence. And that's just sort of a non-fact, or a non-arguable fact. They must have a social presence. So to not have this is to dismiss opportunity.